Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic, let's do it. What's one unsolved mystery that you would like to have the answers to before your time is up on Earth? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Where Susan Powell's body is, I want her parents to be able to bury her with her babies. We all know what happened. Josh murdered her. She deserves better in life, but now that she's gone, she deserves to be with her children, and her family deserve to be able to visit her grave. The disappearance of William Tyrell. Basically, a 3-year-old kid was kidnapped in his front yard after the foster grandma went inside for a glass of water and she heard screaming from the sister, and when she ran out, he was gone. This happened around 2014, and I still remember his face on the news in his Spider-Man costume. Jody Hoisentroot was a reporter who just disappeared after work in Iowa in the 90s. No leads. It would be good to know what happened to her. How propofol works exactly. Doctors know that it works but do not fully understand how. So since it's used in pretty much every anesthesia, is generally considered very safe and gives a rather quick recovery afterward, I'd kind of like to know what it does to your brain to work that way. Where are the women from Highway 16, the Highway of Tears? How many killers? How many women? To be more specific though, consider the location and status of the Jack family. They vanished in and around the same area, never to be seen again. I believe they'll eventually find the wreckage of MH370 and figure out what happened, but it might take time. Even today, they're still discovering old World War II ships and even older ones. I really hope they find it while I'm still around, because I'm curious about what happened to that plane. I just hope it takes years or decades, not centuries. In Yuba County 5, a group of men with intellectual disabilities go missing on their way to a basketball game. 4 were later found dead in the forest. The 5th one was never found. The police botched the investigation. So sad. There are so many questions. In 1971, a guy named D.B. Cooper hijacked a plane, got a ransom, and then jumped out with a parachute, vanishing without a trace. Figuring out who he really was and what happened to him would crack one of the most intriguing mysteries in criminal history. What happened to Sneha Ann Phillip, the NYC doctor who disappeared on the night of September 10, 2001? She was officially added to the 9/11 victim list and memorial in 2007 after her family fought for it in court. But her rocky marriage, professional problems, and the fact that no one knew where she was the night of September 10th have led to a lot of speculation that she was the victim of foul play, or that she took 9/11 as an opportunity to run away and start a new life. Where did the cap on my daughter's thermos go? She's in her 20s now, but this happened when she was in middle school. I know she brought it home from school with the cap on it, and at some point between putting it on the counter and getting it washed, the cap has completely effing disappeared. I turned this house inside out looking for it, but could not find it. It's been over 8 years now, and I still have that thermos in case I find the cap. The disappearance of Timothy Pitson. His mother checked him out of school when he was 6. He went on a 3-day road trip of fun with visits to zoos and amusement parks. Then at the end of the trip, they find her dead via suicide with a note saying Timothy has been given to people who will live and care for him, and assuring the reader that they'll never find him. No one knows what she did with Timothy, but it was confirmed she most likely didn't kill him. So who did she give him to? In 1994, I found a cinema ticket stub for Speed in my jacket pocket. I never saw Speed at the cinema, nor did I lend my jacket to anybody that had. I'd like to know where it came from, so I can one day sit through the film without wondering about it. The identity of Jack the Ripper is a big one. This infamous serial killer who haunted London in 1888 is still unknown. Figuring out who he was would not only solve one of history's creepiest mysteries, but also give some closure to a really unsettling chapter in crime history. The treasure of the Flor de la Mar is a fascinating mystery. This Spanish galleon sank off Malaysia in 1511 with a huge treasure on board. No one knows exactly where it is, so finding it could uncover a major piece of history and possibly recover a lost fortune. I'd love to see what happened to Lars Matank. In 2014, he ran out of an airport in Bulgaria, left all of his belongings, hopped a fence, and was never seen again. You can watch the CCTV footage of him fleeing for his life. I need to know what happened to him. The EL Northwest serial killer. Unknown killers were thought to be tied to multiple deaths in the States from 2018 to 2020, leaving a trail of fear and confusion across multiple states. The killer's spree began in Denver, Colorado, where spreading through the Grand Lake, Wyoming, central Idaho, and Hood River County, Oregon, for a total of 7 victims: a hiker, 2 police officers, an elderly couple, a truck driver, and a woman last seen leaving a bar. The killer's signature was branding the initials EL on the victims' bodies post-mortem. Law enforcement across multiple states were involved in the investigation, which remains one of the most complex and chilling cases in recent history, and they had no clues or leads. The entirety of who killed JFK and why. Oswald getting killed almost immediately afterwards is just too convenient for me. The missing frames in the Zapruder film, the levels of espionage and backroom deals between Russia, Cuba, and the mob, as well as JFK's many secrets, all must somehow interact to make a coherent story. It was a pivotal moment for the world, and it's still really unclear what went down. Yeah, I think I'd go with JFK too. I think it really unlocks a point and a pivot in history and global government, and I don't believe the official narrative at all. There are others, MH370, Epstein's Island Manifest, real reasons for Watergate, a lot of things, but JFK's gotta be at the top of the list. I'd love to see the actual list of people who AR'd young girls on Epstein's Island. It undermines faith in criminal justice to see that while things are brushed under the rug, Democrats, Republicans, black, white, American, British, Cuban, etc., there are a lot of powerful people getting away with R, abuse, kidnapping, even murder, and we just accept that they don't feel like telling us. Where's the outrage? The Delphi girls. The case goes so weird they couldn't make a movie like this. It would be ridiculous. I only got second or third hand stories about it through my wife, who's obsessed with the podcast about it, and it makes my head spin. It's all obfuscated and weird and wild, so much so that I think no matter how things end up with this current suspect, no one will feel like it's 100% case closed. Move on. She was murdered on Christmas 1991 in Hawaii. 6 years later, the police produced 3 suspects who were convicted of killing her, even though the DNA found on her did not match any of the suspects. The jury convicted them anyway. One was murdered in prison, and the other was released earlier this year based on a review of the evidence in the case. About 2 weeks ago, a suspect was finally identified with an exact DNA match. All these years I've followed that case very closely. All these years I've wondered whose DNA. The police brought the suspect in for questioning and then released him out of pure stupidity. 2 days later, he committed suicide. A friend was out drinking at a bar with friends. When everyone went to leave, they couldn't find him and assumed he went home. His body was found at a very small rest stop next to a highway. He was beaten so badly that the police thought he was hit by multiple cars. Whoever killed him got away with it, and I would love to see justice done. Lavenna Johnson, Army, murdered. The Army said she killed herself with a rifle, which was across the room when found. She was right-handed and had a 9mm wound on the left side of her head. I just read on Wiki that she was indeed shot through the mouth per the Army, but an independent medical examiner said her resulting wound was not from a rifle. She had a broken nose, chemical burns on her vagina, and a pile of papers burned near her. She was treated for an STD a week or two prior. These are all from my memory of reading multiple accounts over the years, so I'm not sure if the wiki has all these details, but I didn't feel like searching. I went into a rabbit hole about this a long time ago, so I can't remember all my references. Did Tommy Ziegler mastermind a murder plot that still baffles people to this day on how exactly he pulled it off the way he did? Or is it he the unluckiest person in history who was at the wrong place at the wrong time? I go back and forth every time I read about or listen to his case. Absolutely none of the cases make sense. So much contradictory evidence, so many conflicting stories, and why won't Florida just effing test the DNA? I'm obsessed with wanting to know the full, true story of what happened that night. Only people in the Philadelphia area of a certain age will understand where the Reinert children are. The case was written about Joseph Wambaugh in his book Echoes in the Darkness, and there was a TV miniseries made from it. It was later found that there was police and prosecutor misconduct, and the main suspect was freed after conviction. I don't know whether he and his partner were guilty or innocent. It's very muddled now. But Susan Reinert was murdered, and her 2 young children were never seen again. The 2 suspects are dead, as are the lawyers and the lead investigator. It was such a huge case in my home area that I am intensely curious about what really happened. No matter what happened or who was involved, the children were innocent and deserved a proper memorial. Tika Lewis was a 2-year-old girl who disappeared from a bowling alley in Washington state in the late 90s. She was sitting in an arcade game seat, and her mother turned away for a few seconds to watch her bowl. When she turned back around, Tika had vanished. There were several reports of a suspicious white man with dark hair hanging around the bowling alley and a nearby park in the months leading up to her disappearance, including a report of a boy being molested by him in the bowling alley restroom. According to witnesses, a dark Pontiac sped out of the bowling alley parking lot around the time Tika disappeared. This dark Pontiac also fits the description of the car of the suspicious man who had fled from the room nearby park after trying to lure kids into his bedroom. There was an emergency exit next to the arcade games Tika was at. So kidnapping sounds very plausible, but nobody knows. Alonzo Brooks. I remember when it happened. His case was featured in the first season of the reboot of Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix. Prior to the airing, there was announcements about the FBI reopening the case and exhuming his body to look for more evidence. The UM crew uncovered more than originally investigated, which caused the FBI to follow up. It's still unsolved, but they're closer as a result. What happened to Ray Greicher? A career prosecutor of 40 years vanishes without a trace after investigating Jerry Sandusky. Not just that, but he had Googled how to destroy his own hard drives and evidence and possibly got into another car with someone else after disposing of them in a lake. My friend's sister went missing in 1991 and had never been found. The piece of shit that was done walked on a not guilty. But it's common knowledge that he and his brother-in-law are guilty as hell. The girl's mother referenced and passed away in February last year, and we are hoping at least a body is found before the dad passes. Family and the girl's close friends who were forgotten or is given up on her. Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum theft. I have no particular interest in art, but a couple of years ago I got sucked into a 4-hour documentary about this, and at the very end they finally admitted that it was unsolved and would likely never be solved. To say I was livid is an understatement. If there was not even a hint of an answer, what was the point of all this?